Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we will be discussing the topic of moral agency. More specifically, we will cover two questions. What does it mean to be a moral agent, and how is a moral agent's decision-making impacted by an informed conscience? But before we get to that, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more nonsense like this. So what exactly is a moral agent? Well, according to a quick Google search, a moral agent is any person or collective entity with the capacity to exercise moral agency. This basically means that being a moral agent is having the ability to take responsibility for your actions while making proper differentiations between right and wrong. In order to do this, the moral agent must fully educate their conscience and understand the ethical effects of their agency. The ability to choose right versus wrong actions is a skill that we're not born with, but taught throughout our life. Let's take a look at Prophet Paul. Throughout Romans 7:15-24, Paul explains that because his body is composed of sin, his actions naturally lean toward doing the opposite of good. As he states, "I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. But in fact, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. For I know that the good does not dwell within me, that it is in my flesh." He displays the conflict of his ethics versus his actions. Paul struggles to properly utilize his moral agency and act upon the information he has been given. Verse 22 shows that even though he has the teachings and laws of God in his heart, he struggles to fight against his earthly pleasures, his sins. The extent of being a moral agent should apply to those with a proper understanding of right and wrong. If we were to compare a baby and an adult, the adult is expected to perceive and utilize their free will with the proper grasp of consequences. Moral agency is a skill that takes time and experience to appropriately apply to one's life. An infant would not have the capacity to understand consequences or moral ethics, and therefore cannot be accountable for their lack of moral responsibility. However, there are cases that contradict this comparison. In 2013, Ethan Couch, known as the Affluenza team, killed 4 people in a drunk driving incident. His defense team was able to convince the judge to avoid giving Ethan a sentence because of the way he was raised. They claimed that because Ethan was raised in a wealthy family, he was spoiled to the point where he was not taught the ideas of consequences and therefore should not be held accountable.
He got drunk, then jumped behind the wheel of his pickup truck and plowed down 4 people in a drunken haze. So why isn't Ethan Couch behind bars? Keep in mind, he's just 16, too young to legally drive with any alcohol in his system. And in this case, his blood alcohol measured .24. 3 times the legal limit in Texas. Eric Boyle's wife and daughter were both killed.
We had over 180 years of life taken, future life, not 180 years lived, but 180 years of future life taken. And 2 of those were my wife and daughter.
Ethan Couch was charged with 4 counts of intoxication manslaughter and tried as a juvenile. In one of the most bizarre defense strategies we've ever heard of, attorneys for Couch blame the boy's parents for his behavior that night, all because of how they raised him. A psychologist and defense witness testified that the boy suffered from something called affluenza, a lifestyle where wealth brought privilege and there were no consequences for bad behavior. Prosecutors fought for a 20-year sentence, but the defense argued Couch needed treatment, not prison. The judge agreed and gave Couch 10 years probation plus time in alcohol rehab, no prison.
What? Okay, but to be honest, that is actually insane how the judge found this as a legit explanation. Kinda ironic too, since they're just adding to the problem by not giving him a consequence. His ignorance should not be held as a reason to avoid responsibility. Though he has free will, it is within our society's morals and norms to educate his conscience. Even if Ethan was not taught consequences through his parents, He would have learned it from outside sources like his teachers, neighbors, etc. Ignorance should not allow him to be above the law. This showcases the importance of a well-informed conscience when it comes to one's moral agency. The Catholic Catechism states that man has the right to act in conscience and in freedom so as personally to make moral decisions, demonstrating the importance of independent decision-making. The key part of being a moral agent is responsibility. If we were to do what others told us to and follow commands, that does not demonstrate moral agency. By having the free will to act upon your agency is what truly makes proper moral decisions. Now let's move on to our next question. How is a moral agent's decision-making impacted by an informed conscience? As we know, moral agency correlates with an individual's conscience. Without a conscience, you cannot be a moral agent. However, it is important to differentiate whether or not your conscience is being influenced by your desire for pleasure or the moral principles of the real world. Sigmund Freud introduced an idea where the human mind is divided into 3 levels of consciousness: the unconscious id and superego, and the conscious ego. His theory explained that the id was the inner pleasures of an individual, disregarding consequences of their actions. The superego was the voice of the individual that follows the social norms and moral principles of the world. Lastly, the ego is the mediator between the id and the superego, having the conscious free will to create a balance between pleasure and societal pressure. These types of consciousness can impact the actions of a moral agent. In order to make informed decisions, one's actions must be influenced by the conscious ego, not the subconscious superego or unconscious id. By bringing the desire of your id and superego toward a conscious state, your actions as a moral agent can be balanced between social norms and personal pleasures. Within the Catholic Catechism, it states that if an individual were to commit evil, their conscience will act as a witness. Just like how our actions impact our conscience therefore impacts our actions. Conscience enables one to assume responsibility for the acts performed. This quote further reinforces the two-way relationship between the moral agent's actions and their conscience. By having an informed and educated conscience, it expands your approach to difficult and complicated decisions. Therefore, our actions will become flexible to the situation and can resolve them in a consistent manner. Overall, our actions are positively impacted by an informed conscience because the newfound knowledge brings a wider plethora of moral decisions. All that is left is for our free will to act upon them. Hey guys, before you go, I just wanted to thank you for watching the video, and I really appreciate you being here. Okay, have a good one.